Good morning, everybody. I'd like to certainly echo what you heard here before, that our condolences to everyone who suffered a loss as a result of that, and I would imagine that there's a significant amount of people in this room who have suffered a direct loss, possibly personally and commercially. I know I have on both sides. On the commercial side, our office is at 199 Water Street, which is quite the appropriate name right now. They have finished pumping our building out, but we probably will not have access to that facility until at least the first of next year. Luckily, we have plenty of other offices around the tri-state area, so we're well accommodated with our disaster planning. On the personal level, I live on the South Shore of Long Island, and I have a swimming pool in my basement, or at least I did before I pumped it out. So I'm very familiar with both the claims process right now as well as FEMA, and it's quite a task to get things underway. And a lot of it's theory, but when you experience a real loss, you get to see exactly how the system works. And there's some good bullet points here, which I think will be very appropriate for what's going on here today. So much of the process when you file a claim, and I think that's what we're going to focus on here today, is claims, is what kind of loss have you experienced? For many of you with doctor's offices, dental offices, veterinary offices, you were closed, okay? Closed because of no utilities. Some of you were closed because of windstorm damage. Some of you were closed because of severe flooding damage. And what does that mean? You've experienced a physical property loss. You've also very likely experienced a business income loss, which Ken spoke about a little earlier there, how carriers calculate that and how you can best get reimbursed for that. Now more than ever is a good time to, it's actually not the best time, you should have done this a long time ago, but evaluate the limits you have on your policy. What kind of coverage do you have? Do you have adequate limits for business income? Do you have adequate flood coverage? I'm sure there's a lot of folks here who realize now that they could have better insurance coverage. Prior to this, and I think this storm, or as we like to call it, the event, we don't like to use the word hurricane or superstorm or flood. We let the insurance adjusters do their best to determine how that's handled. We like to call it the event, and the reasons for that is you don't want to box yourself into one sort of name there where you could be knocking yourself out of coverage. So at least in my own case with the flood that I have in my basement, I'm sorry, I said flood. With the event that I have in my basement, I have a homeowner's carrier looking at it, I have my flood carrier looking at it, but I'm letting them determine how they want to handle that. So, unfortunately, the claims process probably takes longer than any of us would like it to take. We'd all like to be made whole within 24 hours. It's certainly not the case. It does take time for insurance carriers to mobilize, especially with a catastrophe this size. We're looking at several weeks, perhaps, to get an adjuster. And has anyone had flood losses here, by show of hands?
I had an event.
You had an event loss. Very good. All right. Somebody's listening. Thank you. So with respect to this event and the folks who raised their hands, have your adjusters visited you yet, or have they given you a timetable? 28th of November. A full month after the event, and I can imagine you're not too happy about that. And that's probably pretty hard to do. So the question is, what do you do while you're waiting? Well, the best thing you can do is to obviously try and mitigate any further loss. So protecting your property, I think that's on one of these slides here. Oh, it's here too. Protecting your property, mitigating further loss. I mean, if you do have flood damage, obviously you want to get that pumped out. Mold is a big concern. Photos. Everyone's got a camera, hopefully, whether on their phone or a small digital camera. Take as many pictures as you can. There's no better way to document the damage than obviously showing pictures to the carrier, because if they come in and you've already done some of the loss mitigation, whether it be gutting walls or pumping out, it's tough to say, well, I had this much water. And, the carrier will say, well, it looks like you had that much water. So as many pictures as you can take, as much as you can show. I mean, documentation is key. So save your receipts, save estimates you have, proposals, anything you can show that will better help the adjusters show you where you're at in a claim. Your agent or broker, very important during this process. More than ever, you should be having conversations with them. Hopefully they have taken the time to sit down with you on your renewals prior to the loss, obviously, and go through the policy language, giving you a better understanding of what you're covered for. Working out, could be a business income worksheet, or it could be just talking about it in theory. If there was to be an event and you were down for 6 months, how would that look to you? How much of that loss can you take? How much of that loss would you like the insurance company to take? Hopefully more of it would land on the insurance company, and you'd be covered. Sorry. We talked about mitigating any damage you can. Again, can't stress that enough. Some of the necessary documentation, of course, at this point, you're probably working with your broker, but you may have received communications from FEMA, from your local authorities. They may be keeping you out of your premises. I would imagine in the Rockaways, gentleman over here is, you probably don't have access to your property yet, is that correct? Or you do? Is there anything left? There's nothing left. How long after the event were you kept out of that property? You were able to go back fast. Okay, good. There. Right, right. Internal costs, documentation of everything, and some of the things you may not think of, your employee costs, any utility costs, rent costs. Many folks will be reviewing lease contracts. If you rent your property, you don't own your property. What's in the contract of your lease? Are you eligible for some rent abatement if you can't occupy that premises for a certain amount of time? Loss of income due to canceled customers. Touched on it earlier that some customers are finally up and running, but they're canceling their appointments. They couldn't get there for gas, whatever it was that caused you to lose revenue. Documentation and communication along the way. And of course, both internal and external communications with what your restoration efforts are. Alternative work locations are a big issue. Some smaller offices may not have any type of contingency plan. Again, ideally, it would have been great to think about all these things before, but Sandy will be the new barometer of how disaster planning goes. If an office can relocate, if you do have alternative space you can occupy, whether it be in another physician's office or just other space you can rent in the meantime. And of course, advising your customers. It's communication to your clients is vital in retaining your clients. And how are you doing that best? Are you calling your clients? Have you lost your call lists? Mailing addresses, whatever it may be.
I came a little bit late, but you may have discussed this, but in case you didn't, it may be beneficial to everybody. I practice in your neck of the woods. I'm on 80 Maiden Lane.
Okay.
So we had more of a business interruption as opposed to physical damages because I'm on the 7th floor. But the building was closed down. I have been in touch with my adjuster, and of course he said, flood, you're not covered. But I made a very good argument with him, and they're considering it now. I told them that the power was cut preemptively by Con Edison at 7:04 on the day of the event, on the 29th. And I told him that my policy, he says, well, your policy doesn't cover you for flood. He says it covers you for wind. I said, yes, but we don't know which would have come first, the chicken or the egg. They cut us preemptively. As such, we will never know if my damages would have occurred from flood or wind.
I love it. This is perfect. This goes back to the event speech.
Right. So what ended up happening was he said, you know, this is the first time I heard this. And he never came in. He's a gentleman in Chicago. He doesn't know his way around downtown at all. He's not coming there because I'm not claiming damages on my premises other than products that we lost in the refrigerator, such as, you know, bleaching materials, cements, things of such.
Right.
But he said to me that he's going to run this by the people. And he said, but he did his investigation, and he said he's going to recommend payment based on what we said. Now, this may not apply to people in Long Island, but definitely people in New York City, it would surely apply. And it might be something for somebody over here. You never know. Maybe Long Island, maybe Loco did cut power also preemptively to protect their equipment. At that point, there you go. You might have a way in.
This is something that, you know, while I can't opine on the coverage per se, you definitely need to sit with your broker. You definitely need to have him understand exactly that you have a direct physical, you know, a direct loss, albeit not a property loss. You have a loss to your balance sheet. You have a business income loss as a result of this. There are provisions on certain insurance policies for civil authority or for loss of power, whether the loss of power is coming from them shutting the power down. I'm not sure, you know, individual policies are endorsed differently, but there are coverages available, you know, for just these type of situations where it's a little unique that they cut your power, you know, as opposed to there's no physical loss. But if the power company shuts down the power, that could be a covered loss for you automatically. I mean, there's subject to a waiting period there, or deductible in this case. But, you know, again, without opining too much on everyone's coverage individually, there is coverage available for all the type of losses that we're seeing now. Any other Qs and As?
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Jeff.